The golden towers of Nexus Prime stretched into the purple sky like giant fingers reaching for the stars. Inside the massive Galactic Council chamber, hundreds of different alien species sat in perfect silence. The air felt heavy with fear and tension. Ambassador Jake Morrison adjusted his dark blue uniform and looked around at his fellow representatives. Most of them were staring at the floor or trembling slightly in their seats. At the center of the chamber stood High Commander Vextai of the Zephrian Empire. He was 12 feet tall with skin that looked like polished crystal. His forearms moved gracefully as he spoke, and his voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. Behind him stood 6 other Zephrian warriors, each one looking like they could crush a human with their bare hands. Lesser beings of this galaxy, Vextai began, his voice cold and sharp. For 3,000 years, the Zephrian Empire has brought order to chaos. We have given peace to worlds that knew only war. We have brought civilization to species that lived like animals. Today we offer you the same gift. Jake Morrison felt his jaw tighten. He had been Earth's ambassador for 5 years, and he had never heard such arrogance. Around him, other ambassadors were nodding eagerly, desperate to please the towering alien. The Kvalak representative was actually bowing so low, his head touched the floor. You have 72 standard hours to make your choice, Vextai continued. Submit your fleets to our command. Surrender your colonies to our administration. Accept your place as servants of the Empire. Those who comply will be allowed to live in peace under our protection. Those who refuse will be eliminated completely. A shocked silence filled the chamber. Jake looked around and saw fear in every alien face. The Andromedans were whispering prayers in their musical language. The massive Bruthan ambassador was sweating through his thick fur. Even the usually proud Centaurians looked ready to surrender immediately. Do any of you primitive species have questions about this generous offer? Vextai asked with what might have been a smile. His crystalline face made it hard to tell. Jake Morrison stood up slowly. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. He was easily the smallest being in the room, barely 6 feet tall and looking fragile compared to the giants around him. Some of the alien ambassadors gasped quietly when they saw him rise. I have a question, Jake said in a clear, steady voice. Vextai turned his attention to the human representative. Yes, the representative of the small mammals from the 3rd planet. What is your question, Tiny One? What happens if we say no? Jake asked simply. A ripple of shocked whispers ran through the chamber. The Zephrian warriors behind their commander shifted their weight, looking amused. Vextai let out a sound that might have been laughter. You ask what happens when insects try to fight giants? The High Commander said, You will be crushed so completely that no trace of your species will remain. Your worlds will be turned to ash. Your colonies will be scattered to the void. Your people will become nothing more than a cautionary tale told to other primitive species. Jake nodded thoughtfully. I see. Thank you for clarifying that. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small communication device. Several Zephrian warriors tensed, thinking it might be a weapon, but Jake simply activated it and spoke clearly into the microphone. This is Ambassador Morrison to all Earth Defense Fleet vessels and colonial governments. The Zephrian Empire has just delivered an ultimatum demanding our complete surrender and enslavement. Please relay this message to President Carter and Admiral Brooks immediately. I will be returning to Earth within the hour to deliver the Empire's formal demands. He closed the device and looked back up at Vextai. Thank you for your time, High Commander. Earth will deliver our response within your specified time frame. The alien leader looked confused for a moment. You speak as if you have a choice in this matter, mammal. Every species in this chamber understands their situation. You will surrender or you will die. Perhaps, Jake said with a slight smile. We'll let you know our decision soon. He turned and walked toward the chamber's exit. Behind him, the other ambassadors began frantically calling out their own surrenders to the Zephrian commander. The Kvalak representative was promising to deliver his entire fleet within 24 hours. The Andromedans were offering to provide detailed maps of their colonies to speed up the occupation process. As Jake reached the chamber doors, he heard WarHFY address his warriors in their native language. Jake had studied Zephrian during his diplomatic training, and he understood every word. The small mammals from Earth seemed confused about their situation, the High Commander said to his subordinates. Perhaps they need a demonstration of our power to help them understand reality. Should we destroy one of their colonies as an example? Asked one of the warriors. No, WarHFY replied. Let them return to their world and discuss our generous offer. When they see the surrender of every other species in the galaxy, they will realize that resistance is impossible. Even primitive mammals can learn when the lesson is simple enough. Jake. Morrison smiled to himself as he left the chamber. The Zephrians were about to learn something that every other species in the galaxy had apparently forgotten. Humans did not respond well to threats. They responded even worse to ultimatums. And they had a very particular way of dealing with bullies who thought size and strength were the only things that mattered in a fight. 6 hours later, Jake's ship landed at the primary spaceport in Washington, D.C. Within minutes, he was sitting in the Oval Office across from President Daniel Carter, a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen too many crises. Also present were Fleet Admiral Helen Brooks, a stern woman with short black hair, and Defense Secretary Ryan Murphy, whose usually calm demeanor seemed strained. So they want us to surrender everything, President Carter said after Jake finished his report. Our fleet, our colonies, our freedom, everything. That's correct, sir, Jake replied. And they're convinced we'll comply because every other species has already agreed to surrender. Admiral Brooks leaned forward. What's their fleet strength in this sector? Unknown exactly, but intelligence estimates put it at least 50,000 ships of various classes. Their smallest destroyers are larger than our biggest battleships. And our fleet! 1,200 ships total, counting everything from fighters to our newest dreadnoughts. Defense Secretary Murphy shook his head. The mathematics are impossible. Even if every shot we fired was perfect, we couldn't win a conventional engagement. President Carter stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. Gentlemen, Admiral Brooks, I want your honest assessment. Can we fight these aliens? And survive? In a straight battle, no, sir, Admiral Brooks said bluntly. But humans have never fought straight battles when we were outgunned. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that the Zephrians have made a critical error in judgment. They've grown used to fighting species that surrender at the first sign of overwhelming force. They've never had to fight someone who refuses to quit. President Carter turned back to face the room. Jake, when you respond to their ultimatum, I want you to make our position absolutely clear. What position is that, sir? The president's expression hardened. Tell them that the United States of America, the Earth, Defense Fleet, and all human colonies formally reject their ultimatum. Tell them that we do not surrender to threats. Tell them that if they want a war, they'll have one. Jake Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. Sir, with respect, that's essentially a declaration of war against the most powerful military force in galactic history. Yes, it is, President Carter said quietly. And it's time this galaxy remembered that humans don't back down from a fight, no matter how big the enemy thinks they are. High Commander WarHFY stood in his command chamber aboard the massive flagship, Eternal Dominion, and stared at the message display in disbelief. The crystalline walls around him pulsed with a soft blue light that reflected his growing anger. His forearms moved restlessly as he read the human response for the third time. Impossible, he muttered in his native tongue. These mammals cannot be serious. General Keelonox entered the chamber with heavy steps that echoed off the metal floor. His scarred face showed confusion as he approached his commander. High Commander, our intelligence division has confirmed the message. The humans have formally declared war on the Empire. A species with 1,200 primitive vessels declares war on our 50,000-ship armada? WarHFY's voice rose dangerously. Do these creatures not understand mathematics? Perhaps they are simply too primitive to comprehend their situation, Keelonox suggested. Our analysts believe their brains may not be capable of processing such large numbers. Vextai turned away from the display and walked to the massive viewing window that showed the stars beyond. Send orders to Admiral Vexmar in the Outer Rim. Have him take a standard punishment fleet to their nearest colony and destroy it completely. Once these mammals see what happens to those who defy us, they will surrender quickly enough. At once, Commander, Killanok said, but he paused before leaving. Sir, our intelligence officers have submitted some unusual reports about human military capabilities. Perhaps we should review them before engaging. What could possibly be unusual about such a primitive species? Vextai asked without turning. Around, their technology appears to be designed primarily for warfare rather than exploration or trade. Also, their tactical doctrines are unlike anything in our databases. Vextai waved one of his hands dismissively. Send the punishment fleet. Immediately, these mammals will learn their place soon enough. 3 days later, Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the enemy fleet approach on her tactical display. 25 Zephrian ships had entered the Kepler system where the human mining colony of New Texas operated. The aliens clearly expected to find defenseless civilians and a token defense force. Instead, they found Lisa Rodriguez and her battle group waiting for them. Enemy fleet is maintaining standard formation, reported Lieutenant Commander Bob Turner from his position at the sensor station. Looks like they're following their basic intimidation pattern? Any attempt at communication from their commander? Lisa asked. Negative, Captain. They're broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies, but they're not waiting for a response. Lisa smiled grimly. Then they're about to learn why that's a mistake. All ships, this is Rodriguez. Execute pattern Delta on my mark. The human fleet consisted of only 8 ships, but they moved with a precision that would have impressed any military observer. The moment Lisa gave the command, her vessels scattered in different directions at maximum acceleration. The Zephrian Admiral probably expected them to run away. He was wrong, the UEs. Defiance and her sister ship Manchester came around the system's largest asteroid at full speed, their weapons already charging. The aliens had positioned their flagship near the center of their formation, protected by lighter vessels. It was a classic defensive arrangement that worked well against other alien fleets, who fought in predictable patterns. Humans had never been predictable. Target their command ship, Lisa ordered. All weapons, continuous fire. The Defiance opened up with every gun she had while racing directly toward the alien flagship. Behind her, the Manchester followed the same suicidal attack pattern. The Zephrian vessels tried to turn and bring their weapons to bear, but the human ships were moving too fast and from an unexpected angle. Captain, we're taking heavy fire, reported Chief Engineer Mary Collins from the engine room. Hull integrity at 60% and falling. Keep us moving, Chief. We only need 30 more seconds. The alien flagship was massive, easily 5 times the size of the Defiance, but its shields were designed to stop conventional long-range attacks. They were not designed to handle 2 human destroyers firing everything they had at point-blank range while moving at combat speed. Lisa watched her ship's hull temperature warnings flash red as they flew through the enemy's defensive fire. Oh. Hands, prepare for ramming speed. Captain, did you say ramming speed? Lieutenant Turner asked with wide eyes. You heard correctly. If we can't punch through their shields with guns, we'll punch through them with our hull. The Zephrian commander must have realized what the humans intended because his flagship suddenly tried to change course. But ships that large could not turn quickly, and the Defiance was already too close. Lisa's vessel slammed into the alien ship's bridge section at nearly full speed. The impact threw everyone on the bridge forward, but emergency systems kept them alive. Lisa hauled herself back to her feet and checked the tactical display. The alien flagship was spinning helplessly with a massive hole in its command section. All ships, execute Phase 2, she commanded into her communications device. That was when the rest of her battle group revealed themselves. They had been hiding in the asteroid field and among the orbital platforms of New Texas. Now they emerged from concealment and attacked the confused alien fleet from multiple directions simultaneously. The Zephrians had trained to fight enemies who engaged them in organized battle lines. They had never faced opponents who used kamikaze attacks, ambush tactics, and coordinated strikes from hidden positions all at the same time. Within 20 minutes, the entire alien punishment fleet was either destroyed or disabled. Only 3 human ships had been lost, and most of their crews had been recovered by rescue vessels. "Captain Rodriguez," came a transmission from Admiral Brooks back on Earth. "Congratulations on your victory. How did you manage to defeat a force 3 times? Your size?" Lisa looked at the wreckage of alien ships floating around her damaged vessel. "We fought like humans, Admiral." "I don't think they were ready for that." The news of the impossible victory spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Dr. Amanda Price was monitoring alien communication networks from her research station when she started picking up strange transmissions from Zephrian colonies near human space. "Colony Command, this is Mining Station Zarian 7, came one transmission she intercepted. "We are requesting immediate reinforcement of our defense fleet." "Zarian 7, you already have twice the standard garrison," came the reply. "Why do you need additional protection?" "The humans, sir. The reports from Kepler system indicate they fight with tactics our commanders have never encountered. We need more ships in case they attack our position." Amanda Price raised her eyebrows and made notes in her research log. She had been studying alien psychology for years, but this was the first time she had ever heard fear in Zephrian voices. More intercepted communications followed throughout the day. Zephrian colonies were requesting emergency supplies, additional troops, and defensive reinforcements. Some were even asking for permission to evacuate non-essential personnel. "This is unprecedented," Amanda said to her assistant, Dr. Kevin Park. "The Zephrian Empire has been the dominant power in this galaxy for thousands of years. They've never shown fear of any enemy. What do you think has changed?" Kevin asked. Amanda looked at the tactical reports from Kepler system that had just arrived. Captain Rodriguez's fleet had used ramming attacks, hidden ambush positions, and sacrificial tactics that no other species had ever attempted against the Empire. "I think they've never fought someone who was willing to die to win," she said quietly. "Every other species surrenders when they realize they can't win conventionally. Humans just find a different way to fight." Meanwhile, in the Zephrian High Command, General Kilonox was presenting his analysis to an increasingly worried High Commander Vexthai. "Our tactical computers cannot predict human behavior patterns," Kilonox reported. "They use their ships as weapons even when it means certain death for their crews. They hide in locations that offer no strategic advantage except surprise. They coordinate attacks without any apparent central command structure." "Surely you exaggerate," Vexthai said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "No species fights with such disregard for logical military doctrine. High Commander, I recommend we reconsider our approach to these humans. They may be more dangerous than we initially calculated." Vexthai stared at the tactical display showing the wreckage of Admiral Vexmar's punishment fleet. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had not experienced since childhood. He felt afraid. Commander Alex Thompson crouched behind a pile of twisted metal and studied the Zephrian mining facility through his binoculars. The planet Zarian 4 stretched out before him like a brown and orange wasteland, but the alien base looked like a small city with its gleaming towers and defensive walls. His commando team had been watching the facility for 3 days, learning the enemy's patterns and weaknesses. "Sir, their supply convoy is running 6 hours late," whispered Sergeant Pete Williams from his position next to a damaged mining crawler. "That's the 3rd delay this week," Alex smiled grimly. "Good. That means our attacks on their supply lines are working exactly as planned." The human strategy for Zarian 4 was unlike anything the Zephrians had ever faced. Instead of attacking the heavily defended mining facility directly, Alex's forces had spent 2 weeks destroying every supply route to the base. They hit convoy ships before they could land, sabotaged communication relays, and destroyed fuel depots scattered across the planet's surface. The aliens inside the facility had enough firepower to destroy any direct assault, but they were slowly starving without regular supplies of food, ammunition, and replacement parts for their equipment. Team 3 reports another successful raid on the Eastern Communication Array, came a voice through Alex's radio headset. That's the last one in this sector, Commander. Excellent work, Johnson, Alex replied quietly. Fall back to Rally Point 7 and wait for further orders. Alex had learned something important about Zephrian military thinking during his weeks on Zarian 4. The aliens were excellent at building strong defensive positions, but they were terrible at adapting when their plans went wrong. They kept sending supply convoys along the same routes even after humans had ambushed them repeatedly. They rebuilt communication arrays in the same locations even though they kept getting destroyed. Most importantly, they seemed unable to understand that humans were not trying to capture their base. The aliens kept waiting for a massive assault that would never come. Sir, we're getting reports from Major Sullivan's team, Sergeant Williams said, checking his communication device. She says she found something important at that research facility. They raided yesterday, Alex nodded. Major Kate Sullivan was leading a separate mission against a Zephrian research base on the other side of the planet. Her team was supposed to gather intelligence about alien technology and military capabilities. What did she find? Alex asked. She didn't say over the radio, but she's requesting immediate extraction to brief command directly. 2 days later, Kate Sullivan sat in a secure briefing room aboard the human carrier UAS Victory and faced a room full of senior officers. Admiral Brooks had flown in personally to hear her report, along with several intelligence specialists and tactical analysts. Major Sullivan, please tell us what you discovered at the research facility. Admiral Brooks said. Kate activated a holographic display that showed recordings from her mission. Admiral, the Zephrians have been studying our combat footage from every engagement. They're trying to understand how we fight. That's not surprising, said Colonel Frank Davis. Any competent enemy would analyze our tactics. Yes, sir, but that's not the interesting part, Kate continued. According to the files we recovered, they're not just studying our tactics, they're studying our psychology. She changed the display to show alien text with human translations underneath. This is a report from their military psychologists. They're trying to understand why human soldiers fight the way they do. Admiral Brooks leaned forward. What conclusions did they reach? They're terrified, Admiral, Kate said bluntly. The report states that human combat behavior defies all known patterns of rational military conduct. They can't understand why our soldiers are willing to die for tactical advantages that don't guarantee victory. Explain that further, Major. Kate pointed to specific sections of the alien report. They analyzed Captain Rodriguez's ramming attack at Kepler system. According to their calculations, she had less than a 15% chance of survival, but she attacked anyway. They can't comprehend why she would take such a risk. Because it worked, said Colonel Davis. She destroyed their flagship. That's exactly what confuses them, sir. In Zephrian military doctrine, you only attack when victory is certain. The idea of accepting heavy casualties for uncertain gains is completely foreign to their thinking. Admiral Brooks studied the translated documents carefully. What else did you learn about their psychology? They're developing what their medical staff calls fear responses to human combat recordings, Kate explained. Several Zephrian units have requested reassignment after viewing footage of our battles. Their soldiers are starting to refuse missions in areas where humans might be present. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The most powerful military force in galactic history was becoming afraid of humans. There's more, Admiral, Kate continued. We also recovered communication logs between their field commanders and high command. They're requesting permission to use their elite Crimson Guard units against us. Who are the Crimson Guard? Asked Colonel Davis. According to our intelligence files, they're genetically enhanced super soldiers. Faster, stronger, and more durable than regular Zephrians. They're usually reserved for the most critical missions. Admiral Brooks smiled for the first time during the briefing. So they're scared enough to deploy their best troops against us. Yes, ma'am, but there's something else. The request was denied. Why? High Command is worried that if we defeat their elite units, it will cause complete panic throughout their military. They're afraid that losing the Crimson Guard to humans would destroy morale across their entire empire. Meanwhile, on the distant planet of Titan 7, Colonel Ben Lewis was about to prove that the Zephrians had good reason for their fears. He stood on a rocky hillside overlooking the alien forward operating base that his regiment had been ordered to capture. The base was defended by regular Zephrian troops, but intelligence reports suggested that Crimson Guard reinforcements were already on their way. "Sir, enemy reinforcements will arrive in approximately 4 hours," reported Captain Nancy Moore. "Should we wait for our own backup?" Ben Lewis checked his weapon and adjusted his combat armor. "Negative, Captain. If we wait, they'll have time to prepare proper defenses. We go in now while they're still expecting us to act rationally. Sir, we're outnumbered 3-1, and that's before their reinforcements arrive." "Then we better finish this fight before they get here," Ben said with a grin. The assault on the Titan 7 base became legendary throughout human military history. Colonel Lewis led his troops in a direct frontal attack against prepared positions, which should have been suicide. But the humans moved with such speed and coordination that the aliens couldn't adjust their defensive fire fast enough. Lewis himself reached the enemy command bunker just as 3 Crimson Guard warriors arrived via transport ship. These aliens were 8 feet tall with enhanced armor and weapons that could punch through human battle tanks. They were designed to be the ultimate soldiers, feared throughout the galaxy. Ben Lewis was 6 feet tall, wearing standard human combat gear, and armed with nothing more advanced than an assault rifle and combat knife. The resulting fight lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, all 3 Crimson Guard warriors were dead, and Colonel Lewis was still standing. He had used speed and tactical thinking to defeat enemies who were physically superior in every measurable way. The recordings of that battle spread throughout the Zephrian military network within hours. For the first time in their species' history, their elite warriors had been defeated in single combat by what they considered a primitive mammal. High Commander Vexthai watched the recordings from his flagship and felt something cold settle in his chest. His empire had ruled through strength and fear for thousands of years, but now his own soldiers were the ones experiencing fear. "General Kilonox," he said quietly, "I want a complete strategic review of our position against these humans." "What specifically should we analyze, High Commander?" "Everything," Vexthai replied. "Their tactics, their psychology, their willingness to die for causes that logic says they cannot win. I think we may have underestimated these mammals more severely than we realized." As he spoke, more reports arrived of human raids throughout Zephrian territory. The humans were not trying to conquer planets or capture resources. They were simply proving that the mighty Zephrian Empire could bleed. And once gods start bleeding, people stop believing they are gods. Intelligence Officer Commander Grace Taylor sat in her darkened office aboard the UES Discovery and stared at the data streaming across her multiple computer screens. For 3 weeks, she had been analyzing captured Zephrian military files, communication intercepts, and strategic reports. What she had discovered would change everything about humanity's war against the Empire. "Computer, display analysis summary on main screen," she commanded, the holographic display filled with charts, graphs, and tactical assessments. Grace had spent her entire career studying alien military capabilities, but the pattern she was seeing defied everything she thought she knew about the Zephrian Empire. "Dr. Patricia King to see you, Commander," came a voice through her office intercom. "Send her in," Grace replied. Dr. King entered the office, carrying a tablet filled with her own research data. She was the fleet's leading expert on alien psychology, and had been working alongside Grace to understand their enemies' weaknesses. "Grace, I've finished analyzing the psychological profiles from Major Sullivan's intelligence raid," Patricia said. "You're not going to believe what I found. Try me," Grace said. "I've been discovering impossible things all week." Patricia activated her tablet and shared the data with Grace's main display. The Zephrian Empire has never actually fought a total war. Every single conquest in their 3,000-year history has been achieved through intimidation and surrender. Grace raised her eyebrows. That's impossible. You don't build an empire spanning half the galaxy without fighting major battles. That. What I thought too, but look at their military records, Patricia continued. Every species they conquered surrendered within days or weeks of first contact. The Zephrians would arrive with overwhelming force, demonstrate their superior firepower, and the target species would immediately capitulate. So their entire military doctrine is based on psychological warfare rather than actual combat experience. Exactly. They're experts at intimidation, but they've never had to adapt to an enemy that refuses to be intimidated. Grace turned back to her own analysis. That explains what I've been seeing in their strategic communications. Their field commanders keep requesting permission to withdraw from engagements with human forces, even when they have superior numbers. What kind of withdrawal requests? Everything from individual unit rotations to complete sector evacuations. Some of their colony worlds are asking to be transferred away from areas where humans might attack. Patricia sat down heavily in a chair. Grace, I think we're fighting an empire that's built on fear rather than actual military strength. But their technology is still superior to ours. Their ships are bigger and their weapons are more advanced. Technology doesn't matter if the soldiers using it are too afraid to fight effectively, Patricia pointed out. And according to these psychological profiles, fear is exactly what's spreading through their ranks. Grace activated her communication system. This information needs to reach Admiral Brooks immediately. If we're right about this, it changes our entire strategic approach. Meanwhile, on the prison world of Vorthan, Captain Steve Andrews crouched behind a concrete barrier and studied the massive detention facility that held 3,000 human colonists. The fortress was surrounded by energy barriers, automated defense turrets, and patrols of heavily armed Zephrian guards. Sir, our reconnaissance shows they have the prisoners in the central complex, reported Lieutenant Mike Chun. But the defenses are too strong for a direct assault. Steve Andrews had volunteered for this mission even though command had warned him it was probably suicidal. The colonists from New California had been captured during a Zephrian raid 3 months ago, and intelligence suggested they were being used as forced labor in alien weapons factories. Lieutenant, I want you to set up our broadcast equipment on that ridge, Steve said, pointing to a hill overlooking the prison complex. Sir, are we calling for reinforcements? No, we're calling for something better, Steve replied with a grim smile. 20 minutes later, Steve Andrews stood in front of a portable communication array and activated a transmission that would reach every enslaved world in the sector. He had learned from captured Zephrian files that millions of beings from dozens of different species were being held in similar prisons throughout the Empire. This is Captain Steve Andrews of the Earth Defense Fleet, he began. I'm speaking to all enslaved peoples who can hear this transmission. For too long, you have lived under the boot of the Zephrian Empire. You have been told that resistance is impossible and that surrender is your only option. He paused and looked toward the prison where his fellow humans were being held. I'm here to tell you that's a lie. The Zephrian Empire is not invincible. They can be defeated, they can be driven from your worlds, but only if we fight together. Steve activated a recording device that had been capturing the sounds of human weapons fire from earlier skirmishes around the prison. You are hearing the sound of human soldiers attacking a Zephrian fortress to rescue our people. We did not come here with superior numbers or better technology. We came here because we believe that no being should live in chains. The transmission continued for several more minutes as Steve laid out a simple plan. Every enslaved world that could hear his broadcast should stage simultaneous uprisings. The Zephrians could not fight rebellions on 100 different planets at the same time. Rise up now and we will fight beside you, Steve concluded. Rise up now and show the galaxy that tyranny can be defeated. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, reports began flooding in from across the sector. The Andromedans on Kepler 9 had seized control of their administrative center. The Bruthan slaves on Mining Station Omega had overwhelmed their guards and captured the facility's weapon stores. The Centaurians in the Vega system had destroyed 3 Zephrian patrol ships and declared their independence. Dr. Patricia King watched the reports stream in from her position aboard the UES Discovery. Grace, we're receiving uprising confirmations from 47 different worlds. The Zephrian Empire is facing rebellions across their entire Outer Rim territory. How are they responding? Grace asked. They're panicking. Intercepted communications show they're pulling garrison troops from border worlds to deal with the rebellions. Some sectors are being completely abandoned as they consolidate their forces. Grace smiled for the first time in weeks. So Captain Andrews' broadcast worked better than we hoped. It worked because he offered something the Zephrians never could, Patricia replied. Hope, meanwhile, in the Zephrian High Command, General Keela Knox stood before High Commander Vexthai with a report that would shake the foundations of their empire. High Commander, we are facing simultaneous rebellions on 112 worlds, Keela Knox reported. Our garrison forces are being overwhelmed across 7 different sectors. How is this possible? Vexthai demanded. These species have been pacified for centuries. They accepted their place in our empire willingly. They accepted their place because they believed resistance was impossible, sir. The humans have shown them that the empire can be challenged. Vexthai turned away from his subordinate and stared. Out at the stars? His empire was built on the absolute certainty that the Zephrians were superior to all other species. That certainty was crumbling with every human victory and every successful rebellion. Sir, there's more, Keela Knox continued reluctantly. Several of our own colony worlds are requesting permission to negotiate separate peace treaties with the rebels. What? Vexthai spun around. Our own colonies want to surrender? They're afraid, sir. They believe that continued association with the Empire will make them targets for human attack. For the first time in his life, High Commander Vexthai understood what it felt like to watch an empire collapse. The humans had not conquered his territory through superior firepower. They had destroyed it by proving that the Zephrian Empire could bleed. General, how many loyal worlds do we still control? Keela Knox checked his datapad with shaking hands. Approximately 60% of our core territory remains under direct control, but that number is decreasing daily. Vexthai closed his eyes and tried to comprehend how a war against 1,200 primitive ships had turned into the dissolution of his 3,000-year-old empire. Sir, what are your orders? Keela Knox asked quietly. Prepare the core fleet for total war, Vexthai said finally. If these humans want to destroy our empire, then we will show them the true power of the Zephrian military. But even as he spoke the words, Vexthai could hear the uncertainty in his own voice. The empire that had never known defeat was learning what fear felt like, and fear was proving to be more destructive than any human weapon. Fleet Admiral Helen Brooks stood on the bridge of the UES Liberation and watched the largest space battle in galactic history unfold before her. The Nexus system stretched out in all directions, filled with thousands of ships from dozens of different species. The combined human and rebel fleets faced the core armada of the Zephrian Empire in what everyone knew would be the final confrontation. Admiral, we're receiving final position reports from all allied fleets, reported Captain Tom Bradley from his communications station. The Andromedan Liberation Navy is in position on our starboard flank. The Free Bruthan fleet is holding the port formation. The Centauran Independence Force is ready to execute the flanking maneuver. Helen nodded grimly. And our human forces? All ships report ready for battle, ma'am. Captain Rodriguez has the destroyer squadrons. Colonel Lewis is commanding the assault transports. Captain Andrews leads the fast attack wings. Through the massive viewing window, Helen could see the Zephrian core fleet arranged in their traditional battle formation. Massive dreadnoughts protected by layers of smaller vessels, all positioned to deliver maximum firepower against any approaching enemy. It was an impressive sight that had intimidated countless species into surrender over the millennia. Today, it would not be enough. Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephrian flagship, Captain Bradley announced. Put it on the main screen. High Commander Vextai appeared on the display, his crystalline features showing strain and exhaustion. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship buzzed with activity as his officers prepared for battle. Admiral Brooks of the human fleet, Vextai began, his voice lacking its former arrogance. I offer you one final chance to prevent unnecessary bloodshed. Surrender now, and your species will be granted a place of honor within the Empire. Helen almost smiled at the desperation in his voice. High Commander, I counter with an offer of my own. Surrender unconditionally, and we will allow your species to join the new Galactic Republic as equals rather than conquerors. Impossible. Vextai snapped. The Zephrian Empire has ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. We will not bow to primitive mammals and their collection of rebel slaves. Then you have chosen to learn the hard way what happens when gods try to fight mortals who refuse to worship them, Helen replied calmly. Admiral Brooks out. The transmission ended, and Helen turned to address her fleet. All ships, this is. Admiral Brooks, today we end 3,000 years of tyranny. Today we prove that no being in this galaxy needs to kneel before another. All units, execute battle plan freedom. The human fleet moved first, accelerating toward the Zephrian lines at maximum speed. But instead of charging directly into the alien guns, they scattered into dozens of smaller groups that approached from multiple angles simultaneously. The rebels followed suit, with each species contributing their own unique tactical advantages. To the coordinated assault, the Andromedans used their superior sensors to target Zephrian weak points. The Bruthans employed their massive ships as mobile fortresses that absorbed enemy fire while advancing steadily. The Centaurians utilized their speed to hit and run against isolated enemy vessels, but it was the humans who provided the coordination that made it all work. Captain Lisa Rodriguez led her destroyer squadron through a gap in the Zephrian formation and began targeting their command ships. Colonel Ben Lewis transported his assault troops directly onto enemy vessels to capture them from within. Captain Steve Andrews coordinated lightning-fast attacks that struck multiple targets before the aliens could respond. Admiral, the enemy formation is beginning to collapse, reported Captain Bradley. Their commanders can't coordinate responses to this many simultaneous attacks. Helen watched the tactical display show the gradual disintegration of Zephrian battle lines. Their ships were individually superior to anything the rebels could field, but their commanders had no experience fighting enemies who refused to follow predictable patterns. Ma'am, we're receiving surrender requests from several Zephrian squadrons, Bradley announced with surprise. Already? The battle has only been going for 30 minutes. Yes, ma'am. It appears that many of their ship captains are refusing to continue fighting. They're abandoning their positions and requesting safe passage out of the system. The sight of Zephrian vessels fleeing the battlefield had an immediate effect on the remaining alien forces. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before suddenly appeared vulnerable and uncertain. The myth of Zephrian invincibility was crumbling in real time, broadcast across the galaxy for all to see. High Commander Vextai watched his empire dissolve from his flagship bridge and felt something he had never experienced before in his long life: complete and utter defeat. Not just military defeat, but the psychological destruction of everything his species had believed about themselves. High Commander, Admiral Vekvar's entire battle group has surrendered, General Kilonox reported. The Second Fleet is retreating without orders. The Third Fleet is requesting permission to negotiate individual truces with the rebels. How is this possible? Vextai asked quietly. We have superior numbers, superior technology, superior firepower. But we don't have superior will, sir, Kilonox replied. The humans and their allies are fighting for something they believe in. Our forces are fighting because they were ordered to. As if to emphasize his point, another group of Zephrian ships broke formation and fled toward the edge of the system. The sight of their own forces running from battle was having a devastating effect on remaining loyal units. Sir, the humans are requesting a meeting, Kilonox continued. They're offering to discuss terms of surrender, terms of coexistence. Sir, they're not demanding our surrender. They're offering to negotiate a place for our species in their new galactic government. Vexthai stared at the tactical display showing the scattered remains of his once mighty fleet. The humans could easily finish destroying his remaining forces, but instead they were offering mercy to a defeated enemy. Very well, he said finally. Arrange the meeting. 2 hours later, a small human shuttle docked with the Zephrian flagship. The airlock opened, and to everyone's surprise, out stepped a single human female wearing simple military fatigues. She was barely 5 feet tall, and looked like she could be crushed by any Zephrian warrior. "High Commander Vexthai?" she asked in perfect Zephrian. "I'm Sergeant Maria Lopez. I'm here to discuss the terms of peace." "You?" Vexthai looked confused. "Where are your negotiators? Your admirals? Your diplomats?" Maria smiled. I volunteered. "Sir, you see, we heard that your culture respects personal combat, so we thought maybe we could settle this the traditional way." "You wish to fight me in single combat?" Vexthai's forearms moved restlessly. "Small mammal, I am the greatest warrior in Zephrian history. I have never been defeated." "That's what they told me," Maria replied cheerfully. "Should be interesting." Then, the duel took place in the flagship's cargo bay with representatives from both fleets watching via video link. Vexthai stood 12 feet tall and was armed with traditional Zephrian weapons that could cut through starship armor. Maria Lopez carried a simple combat knife and wore standard human battle gear. The fight lasted exactly 7 minutes. Maria used speed, tactics, and pure determination to systematically dismantle the greatest warrior of an empire that had conquered half the galaxy. She was faster than Vexthai expected, smarter than he anticipated, and absolutely refused to give up even when wounded. When it was over, the High Commander of the Zephrian Empire lay defeated on the deck of his own flagship by a human sergeant who barely reached his chest. "The Empire formally surrenders," Vexthai gasped from the floor. "What are your terms?" Maria helped him to his feet with surprising gentleness. "No terms, sir. No surrender needed. We're dissolving the Empire entirely and inviting every species to help build something better." 3 months later, Ambassador Jake Morrison stood before the first assembly of the new Galactic Republic and delivered words that would be remembered for centuries. "We didn't declare war on an empire," he said to representatives from hundreds of worlds. "We declared war on the idea that any being should kneel to another. Today we end the age of empires and begin the age of equals." In the audience, former High Commander Vexthai sat quietly among other reformed Zephrian leaders. He had learned more about strength in his defeat than he had in 3,000 years of victory. The galaxy would never be the same again.